Hello and welcome back. I apologize for not uploading for a couple of weeks. It involved me working overnight, so I had zero time to upload. But we're back, and I'm planning on grinding out a few videos over the next couple of weeks. Today I will be showing you something that my friends and I have been doing since 2K16, and it involves a custom MyLeague online experience that no one has ever done. We've been doing this for years. We haven't seen anybody else replicate it. So this is where I'm showing it to the world so you guys can do this with your friends as well. So basically what we do is we have our own custom made roster where we take all of the all-time players on the all-time rosters. So what we do is take out all the duplicates and then put the players on the teams where they had the best season. So for example, LeBron James on the all-time Miami Heat, but you will not see him on the all-time Cleveland Cavaliers. We also do cool things like add players that aren't in the game. For example, Charles Barkley, Reggie Miller, Ron Artest, and even Walt Bellamy. So right now you're probably thinking, oh, anybody can put the roster like this together. What makes this different? Well, that's what I'm about to show you. Alright, so this is where the fun begins. We move over to a Google spreadsheet where my friends and I do all of our drafts, because it's hard for 8 of us or so to get together at the same exact time and do a draft on 2K. So when everybody has a different schedule, we're able to log on to this Google spreadsheet and make our picks whenever is convenient for us. So on the sheet we have a draft template, we have our roster, and we have a games tab. We'll start with the draft template. So here is where we set up the draft for our league. The rules we usually do is we call it a teams draft with restrictions. There are many variations that we have done in the past, but this is the one that we typically go to because it creates balanced teams and it creates a bit of an unpredictability when you're drafting your team. So you're not drafting the same players over and over again. So the first thing you do, find how many players you're going to have in your league. The ideal number I think is 8. But we've done this with 4, we've done this with 6, we've done this with 10, and we even somehow managed to get through a 15-person league in 2K20. So for this example, we're going to act as if it is an 8-team league. So each team has to follow restrictions that we have set up for this. So this is what we use for our tiers. A pink diamond is a player from 97 to 99 overall. A diamond is a player from 94 to 96. Amethysts are 89 to 93. Rubies are 85 to 88, and sapphires are anything 84 and below. Now we set up these restrictions on our own. Obviously in my team, the tiers are different, but this is what we set up based on the number of players at each tier. So let's check out the roster real quick. So as you can see here, we copied the roster from NBA 2K21 that we created, and we put in each player, its overall, its position, and the tier that the player falls into. So when we do a teams draft, we'll randomize the teams in a second to show you. But if you have, for example, let's say you have a Sacramento Kings pick, you must have to pick a player on the Sacramento Kings roster. Now the beautiful thing about having restrictions is you want to look at all the other picks that you have and determine the best player or the best value for the player that you can get for that team. For example, if you have a Celtics pick, there are a lot of good options from the Celtics, but you can only pick one of these players. You have to determine which player has the best value for your team, and you also have to determine if you can get, say, a better diamond player from another team. I'll touch up on that again in a second, but we'll go back to the draft template for now. If we're going back to set this up for an 8-person league, the first thing we need to do is set a draft order. The draft order for a teams league with restrictions doesn't matter as much as it would be as a free draft. We'll randomize the draft order and the teams that we would get to pick from. We're just going to call these players A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. We hit randomize. Boom, there's the draft order. We copy and paste that into the person category. When we do this, we make it serpentine, so then you enter the draft order backwards, and now select them all. Each team must have 14 players on them. So this is already 2 picks right here. Every time you paste, that's 2 more picks. So that's 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So at the bottom, you'll see we're at 115 on the row. Subtract 3 from that to get 112. So that's how many teams you need. So we'll move on to this random list website that gives you a list of all the NBA teams, and you get to select the quantity that you want the site to produce for you. So if this box isn't checked, you want to check it so there are duplicates of the team, and you set the quantity to the number of teams that you want to get out of it. Hit rerun. All the teams are randomized 1 through 112. So that all you have to do now is highlight them all, copy it, click on the first free space in the extra column, hit paste, and all the teams show up. And I forgot to mention, once the draft order is selected, that's the order that you type in the teams. So E has first pick, H has second pick, B has third pick, and so on. Another thing we do is that if you have the first pick, you also get to pick the team that you want first, but we usually don't have a problem with that because it doesn't really matter that much what team you are, because we all end up changing our jerseys and uniforms anyway and use custom teams once we create the online MyLeague. So what we do instead, I like to pick the Rockets because I like running their offense. So when you type in Rockets, the colors for the Rockets automatically show up. And then that's how the roster creator for your league knows what team to put the players on. So something that I forgot to do and I just realized is before you start any of this, you aren't going to be able to edit the document directly. So go to File, make a copy, and name it whatever you want your league to be named. We're going to call this 2K League Tutorial. All right, there. You want to do that so your template doesn't get messed up and you don't have to delete every time you create a new league. So now once you have your draft set up, you can share it with your friends, going up to the top right and clicking share. And then all you have to do is type in all your friends' emails and they'll be able to have access to the document. So now the draft can begin. So a cool thing about this is that you don't need to pick an order, and you can make whatever picks that you want as long as another player doesn't have the same team before you. So for example, A's first pick is Toronto, but as you see up here, person E also has Toronto. They have to make their Raptors pick before A can make their Raptors pick. However, A's second pick is the Miami Heat, and as you see here, there's no team before them that has the Heat, so they can go ahead and make their Miami Heat pick to get it out of the way. So now since the roster is listed here, the people that are picking don't necessarily have to go into 2K and look up the roster, which as you saw in the beginning was all-time no duplicates. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and plan this draft as if we are Team E. I know all my friends plan their drafts differently. Some of them just wing it, others write players down on a sheet of paper. I like to make another copy of this spreadsheet, but for the sake of this video, we'll just use a sticky note that I can have over on the screen. So all of E's picks, I will write down, and I will also make a note of what number their pick is. So for example, E has the first Raptors pick, so I will put a 1 next to that. Alright, so now that's done, we can take a look at what kind of players we can get for our team. So just by looking at the sticky note here, you're able to tell, like, since you can only get 1 pink diamond, that's usually what you want to build your team around. So again, the teams that have a 1 next to them, that means E has the first pick of all those teams. Raptors, Rockets, Lakers, Thunder, Mavericks, and Warriors. Those teams have some good pink diamonds, so let's go take a look at them. Starting with the Raptors here, there's Kawhi Leonard as a pink diamond. One of the best diamonds that we found is Vince Carter. So Vince Carter might be a good diamond to have, so you want to keep Vince Carter in mind. So what I like to do is make a note of the potential players that I would like to pick from this team. And again, just because these picks are in order doesn't mean you have to pick them in order. If you want to wait on someone else to make a pick before you decide what to do, you can totally do that. One thing I should point out is what your starting 5 could potentially look like. So you're going to have your pink diamond, you're going to have your diamond, you're going to have 2 amethysts, and then you're also going to be starting a ruby. You get 5 rubies on your team, so that means your bench is going to consist of 4 rubies, and if you have a 10-man rotation, you're also going to be playing a sapphire. Then after that, the rest of your team is filled out with 4 other sapphires. So back to the draft planning. So again, going back to the Raptors, Vince Carter would be nice, Bosch wouldn't be so bad, and if it came to it, I wouldn't mind having Andre Bargnani coming off the bench, because he's a solid shooter, and having a good sapphire shooter off the bench, you know, that's not so bad. Moving over to the Rockets, you can get Hakeem, you can get Harden, Yao Ming is another player that's kind of popular just because he's 7'6" and he's the best super tall player in the game. Steve Francis is also another good player to have. So in this case, I would consider taking Yao or Steve Francis. Moving on to the Knicks. So as you see, we have the second Knicks pick. So the person before you has to make a pick before you do. But it's still okay to plan out who you want. You want to have a plan A and a plan B. The Knicks are kind of filled with a bunch of very okay players. This is probably a team where I'd want to take a Sapphire from. Since we have the second pick here, we are at least guaranteed Mitchell Robinson or Nate Robinson as a Sapphire. Last one here that I'll plan for before I just fill out the rest of the team are the Los Angeles Lakers. You have 3 very solid pink diamond options and an okay one in Jerry West. I'm a big fan of Elgin Baylor, so this is a team you probably want to take a pink diamond from. I like having Magic Johnson. I like using big point guards, but Kobe Bryant is also unreal in these MyLeagues, so you can't really miss with any of those. And same thing for Shaq. Shaq is a super dominant big. Personally, I don't like building my team around a center. I want to build my team around the player that's going to have the ball in his hands the most, which would be a guard more often than not. Actually, I changed my mind. I'm going to show one more because this is a situation you could run into. We'll go down all the way to the Denver Nuggets. We have the 6th Nuggets pick, which could create a problem when drafting your team. The Knicks do have some decent options, such as Melo. Alex English isn't that bad. Jokic is fun to play with. Jamal Murray is available, but he's a low-end Ruby, so he doesn't have that much value. And then there's also 4 Sapphires you can get if you don't want to play any of those guys. So there are worse teams you could get for the 6th pick of a team, but it's hard to know for sure like what player you're going to get from there. You could plan for having a player like Melo, but then that might affect some of your other picks, such as your Raptors pick. You consider getting Vince Carter, but if you want to have a chance at Melo, you might wait to see if anybody else picks Melo before you ultimately decide to take Vince Carter or make your Raptors pick. Basically, you can do that by communicating with the other players you're drafting with. As long as you tell them that you're waiting on this person to make this pick so you can make another pick that you have, then usually it works out. But if it comes down to it where 2 people aren't budging, the person that has a pick before the other person must pick before that person. So I think by now you get the idea. So this is a draft that we did in NBA 2K20. This was our second league. As you see, we did the same teams concept that I showed you in the tutorial. So these are some examples of the teams you could end up with. So my team right here, pink diamond was Magic Johnson. My diamond was John Havlicek. 2 amethysts, Grant Hill and Marc Gasol. Then rubies and Andre Karolinko, Reggie Theus, Andre Iguodala, Kenyon Martin, Hassan Whiteside. Andrew Wiggins as the Sapphire, played off the bench, and then 4 other Sapphires that I didn't play. As you see over here, Cody had Steph Curry and Hakeem Olajuwon as pink diamonds, but that's because he made a trade. Now I can't find what the trade was, but after the draft is done, so you must draft using the restrictions provided. But after the draft, you're free to trade across restrictions. So for example, Cody looks like he traded away an amethyst and a diamond to get another pink diamond. And that is completely okay to do. So as you see, when you pick a player, you put the player's name in the player column, you put the position, then you also put the overall. When you enter the overall, the colors automatically shows up, which makes it very convenient. And when you pick a player, it is very important. We have this rule in place where we must cross out a player that we draft, just so if another person has, let's say, a Bucks pick, the second person with a Bucks pick gets on the document, all they have to do is go to the roster page to see who's been taken. They don't have to scroll through the draft to figure out who was taken. For example, if you look at the Bucks, you see Giannis, Marquise Johnson, Ricky Pierce, and Eric Bledsoe are crossed out, so that means that person must pick a player that is not crossed out. We have a rule in place: if you forget to cross out a player and someone else notices that has a pick for that team, they're allowed to steal that player, and that person must then make a new pick, which could totally alter their draft plan. So it is very important to remember to cross out your players afterwards. Once the draft is complete, I'll show you what to do to create the roster. Go over to features, create roster, NBA, user created roster. Now you see my roster right here, all time no duplicates version 2.0. To make it easier, I would search my gamer tag, Sportstud1336 with 2 S's. Now, I didn't realize that every time I shared or I saved the file and renamed it, it would upload onto the 2K server. So just to be clear, version 2.0, that is the most up-to-date one. So you want to click that, and now on the main teams, you'll notice that none of the players are there. You want to go to the all-time teams. So on the all-time wizards, you'll see all of the all-time players. What I like to do to make this easier is go through each of the teams that the players in your league picked. So for example, E picked the Rockets. So what we're going to do is hit A, go all the way to the bottom, delete all players from list. You won't need any of these players. Hit yes, and now the roster is blank. So now when you go over to select the players for the roster, so say we had Vince Carter on the team, we ended up drafting Vince Carter, assigned to another team. Now because they're in the all-time teams, you don't need to go that far. All you need to do is go down to the Rockets, assign him to the Rockets. You see he goes away from the all-time Raptors, but you go back to the current teams, go over to the Rockets, boom, he's there. So all you have to do is repeat that process for 14 players for each team. It does take an hour or two depending on the number of teams, but this is by far the most efficient way to do it. So when saving the roster, we'll say that all the teams are done. Hit save roster. Don't save it over the file, the template file, because then you'll lose it. That's more pressure for me as the creator of this roster. I definitely don't want to do that. So I need to make sure I do new file. I would just call it 2K League 1. Hit done. You won't have to worry about this message if all of the teams you want are filled out. So now once the roster is created, you're ready to begin the league. Go to MyLeague Online, and the first thing you want to do is hit Y to select the roster. Any roster that you save locally will appear. As you see, the 2K League 1 roster that I just made is not up here because the Rockets did not have a full team. Like I only had one player on the team, so it's not going to show up. So for this example, I'll just use the all-time no duplicates roster that we already had saved before. So all you need to do is do current teams, start in regular season. You don't need to worry about any of the timers. The timers should just be paused once you go in. So if you just clicked live, that would be fine. Setup options. We like to play on 8-minute quarters because that results in more realistic scoring, we found. And if you're down early in the game, you have a solid chance of making a comeback. Since we already did the draft beforehand, we don't need to set a fantasy draft. For trades, you want to the draft picks don't matter because you're only playing through basically a season. And also you want to turn off trade approval so people can make trades without the commissioner's approval. Injuries are always off, and we want all-star difficulty. So that's about it for that. You want to enter your league name, and then the league will start creating. So you want to select your team that you will be using in the league. So I'll go back to the Rockets. Push down on the right stick, this screen will pop up. All of the timers should start paused, and they should remain paused, so you don't need to do anything with them. If they aren't paused, you're able to do that from this menu. So once this is set up, you can invite everybody else in your league by going to league members, hit Y to view your friends, and all you have to do is hit A on somebody that you want to invite and hit invite to league. And your friends will have to go to the My League screen from the main menu, and they should see a pending invite. And like I mentioned earlier, most of us don't stick with the NBA team that we picked. We usually find a team, download our own team, or sometimes we even create our own. We relocate to different cities, stuff like that. We make it super fun. So when you're ready to start playing games, you'll notice that you don't have to play the games in order on an online My League, which is nice. So you don't have to simulate anything to get to a game. So say you had a friend that was the Warriors, you'd click A on it and it would say invite so-and-so to game. That's how you're able to play with your friends. One reason we don't simulate any of the games is because one, it'll mess up the records. Even though we keep track of that in the document, it's still cool to look at the stats from the conference standings. And also the league leaders, we don't want to see computer controlled teams have players in the statistics. Like we want to see all of the stats from the players that we are using. And we don't really have a set thing, but we do like to vote on MVPs for each league that we do. And another thing that I think is worth mentioning, we're not allowed to trade with computer controlled teams. You can only trade with user teams, which ultimately means you can only trade for players that were drafted by other players. Now all we do is play each other. We don't play any computer games. We can if we want, but they don't count towards the record for the league. We keep track of all of our standings in the games tab of the spreadsheet. So this may look kind of confusing, but we've got it down to where it's pretty simple to read. So our point system, you get 2 points for getting a double-digit win, 1 point for a single-digit win, and 0 points for a loss. So that way it makes it a little more interesting. So if you win, so say there's 10 games to be played and you win all of your games by single digits, a person with 6 wins that won all of their games by double digits would pass you in the standings. So it's important to, so it's an interesting element added to one, try to win games by as much as possible, and 2, if you're getting absolutely destroyed, you can at least reel it in so that person doesn't get the 2 points potentially. So the way we enter games into the document, so for example, Deontay lost by more than 10 points to me, so he gets a loss greater than 10. In return, in my row, I get a win greater than or equal to 10 against Deontay. We have all 4 of the marks that we use below the games tabs. All we have to do is copy and paste into the section that it goes in. And then as you see up here, we also keep track of the records of individual games. Then to the right, we have the standings. After each game that's played, we manually enter the points and games played, and automatically it'll get rid of the games remaining, which I think you have to enter manually. So yeah, since every team is playing 7 games, you must select this number to 7, and it'll automatically go down after every game that is played. And also to have an idea of who's in first place as the league is going, we have a points per game average. So after all 7, so if not everybody has played the same number of games, this is a good way to see who is in first place or who is doing really well. Depending on the number of people we have, we sometimes do 2 games versus every person, or we'll do 1 game against every person. Or if we have a big league, we'll set up divisions to where we play a certain number of people twice and then play everybody else once. It just really depends on the number of people. So in this league, we played everybody once. We find this to be the best way to do it because it makes the leagues go faster and it reduces the chance of somebody giving up on the league and quitting, which happens almost all the time. It is very rare that we're able to get through one of these leagues with more than 8 people. So once the regular season, if you will, is done, we move on to a playoff bracket where we will seed based off of the results of the season. So we do have a seeding tiebreaker listed in the document. So after points, the seeding tiebreaker goes record. After record, it'll go head to head. If we play each other more than once, this is where points differential head to head comes into play. But since this league did not have that, we move on to the most wins greater than or equal to 10. And then fewer losses by double digits. We never have to go past that. So the rest of the tiebreaker criteria is just there for shits and giggles. Yeah, not once we've had to go to a coin flip. That could change, who knows? Alright, so that pretty much covers this 2K League tutorial. I feel like I had a lot of information to go to and I may not have explained everything super well. I tried the best I could. We've been doing this for, like I said, about 5 years now, so everything comes pretty easy to me. For someone that is just learning how to do this and wants to do this with their friends, it may seem a little confusing. So if you are wanting to do this, and I may have missed some details, so let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'll leave a link to the Google Sheets template in the description, so you're able to make a copy and do your own leagues with your own friends. So yeah, we like to do these once we get tired of playing rec, and it's something fresh and unique that we get to do. Every league is different. It's super fun, super competitive. And also I'm doing this because we are wanting to start one of these leagues soon, and I will be posting gameplay from those leagues. It should be really fun. I think everyone will enjoy it. It'll also kind of introduce more of the friends that I play with, and I think ultimately it'll be pretty good content. If you like this idea and you want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe. Like I said, we'll get some gameplay from future leagues. We'll be starting one up very soon. So yeah, be sure you subscribe so you can see how the league is played out. See you guys.